All right, so before we start talking about Git and GitHub, we need to sign up or sign in to GitHub. So if you don't have an account, you sign up or create an account. Or if you do, you sign in. But you can go to github.com. So sign up if you don't have an account. I already have an account, so I'm just going to sign in instead. Put in your username or email address. This email address we are going to use when we are trying to link Git to GitHub. So mine is info. Then password, you can put in your password. An alternative approach is to sign in with passcode, which is the one I prefer. So you can save if you want. We'll just choose no. You can set up your passcode or whatever method you want. So you can use passkey or use authenticator app if you want to. All right, so now you've created a GitHub account. And by the way, you can either use your VS Code in your machine or you go to VSCode.dev and code online. So whichever works for you. So you can open remote repository, open repository from GitHub, continue. Good. So alternatively, you can just go to any repository. So for example, this one, job tasks. Then change the .com to .dev. Allow. It added an additional extension, which is the GitHub Pull Request. You can find it here. So there you have it. You can optionally also install it in your VS Code offline if you want to. All right, so back to VS Code offline. All right, so in this tutorial, we're just going to use Git and GitHub CLI so that we can actually push our code from the local repository to the remote repository. So this process is going to be done not often. So sometimes I'm going to do it off screen. So but I just want to show you, just in case you don't know how to use Git. And if you know Git and you actually want to just see how it's done in a different approach, then you can follow along. Else, if you can also skip if you want to. Already we've actually added a config file for Windows. Don't worry, we are going to add that later on. But I just want to show you how to actually push your code from the local repository to the remote repository. But first thing first, you need to set up your Git so that we can link our name and email in our local repository to our remote repository and start pushing code or making commit messages. So first thing first, you need to initialize an empty repository. So I'm going to say git init. All right, so here is telling us to configure our Git in order to set up our default branch. But the default branch can either be main or master, but I'm good with either. But if you want to be more specific, you can actually configure it. But what I'm interested in is setting up my name and email. So I'm going to say git config. Then the flag here can be either be global or local, but I want to set it as local because I don't want it to be configured in this repository. But if you want it global, so that you don't have to always set it every time you want to push a code when you create a new repository, then you can do so. But I'm going to say local. Then I'm going to set my name, user.name. Here you can set whatever name you want, but I want to use Osage below. Then here you need to put in your email. Make sure that the email is correct so that Git can link it to your GitHub repository. .email. Now that we've set up our Git, we can now make commits. Currently, we have our files in our working directories. In this case, it's just a simple directory with config folder in which we have macOS folder, and inside we have file. So we want to move it to a staging area. So for that, I'm going to say git add. So git add is going to do that for us to move our files and folders from our working directory to the staging area. Then I can put dots. That is if you want to actually move everything, all the files. If there are many folders and files, this dot is going to move every single files and folder into the staging area. Or specifically, you can just target a particular folder, config, in that scenario. But either way, either you use config or just use dot, it's the same in this scenario. But yeah, I'm going to just press enter. Now we can make commits. We can commit our changes. So I can say git commit -m or message or -m -message. Commonly people use -m. Then I can put the message here. But it's a good practice to specify the type of commit. In our scenario here, it's actually a core because we are not adding new feature or making any bug fixes. Then you can put a colon, then space, then add the commit for that particular file or folder. Or optional, you can also add a scope. In our case, the scope is config because it's a config file, brew file. So you can add config or brew file, whichever you want. Or maybe I'll just put brew file. Then you can add a message, add essential CLI and GUI tools to brew file. Make sure your commit message is short because there's possibility for us to add description. So sometimes your commit message might not actually provide all the changes you've made in a particular file or folder. So you can add description. Very handy when you're working with lots of developers. So to do that, just add a -m flag, then add a opening quotation mark, then enter, then put in another message here, a descriptive message. Include CLI tools like a Git, GitHub CLI, Bond, which is an alternative to JavaScript runtime, MongoDB, installer. Alright, so I'm going to pause the video to complete the description. Alright, so once you are done, you just have to close the message with closing quotation mark and press enter. So as you can see, there was a change here. We had one file added to the staging area. Now the next stage is to push. Already they're also suggesting another command to use git branch -m to make as your default branch when you push. But I'm going to skip that process and rather push. You can push, it's optional, or just continue making changes. Git is going to track that for you. So before we push, right, we've not set up a remote repository where we can push our code. So for that, I'm going to use the GitHub CLI to set it up. You can use Git, but I'll use GitHub CLI. Is way much easier. So for that, I'm going to say gh repo create, which is the CLI we installed. Enter to create a repository. We've created a local repository already. So I'm going to push an existing local repository to github.com, which is the remote repository. Enter. So now paths. So I'm going to use this path, this current path, which is the Express app project directory. You can press enter, put dot and enter. The repository name. I'm going to use this repository name. If you want to change it, you have to type it down. I'm just going to press enter. Description, you can put a description here, but I will later create a description later on, so you can leave it blank for now. So you can either make it public or private. I'll make it public. Then add a remote, yes. Enter. Then what should the name of the remote be called? I'll use origin as default. You can change it if you want. It's actually important because you can create multiple repository with different remote origins. So I'm going to leave it as so. Would you like to push yes? Yes. Good. So now you can go to this repository here. So I'm going to Safari. So github.com/ or use the Arc browser or whatever browser you have. Text stack space. Here it is. All right, so this is the repository we've created. So what I want you to do is to add a config file in your config folder, make commit and push the code. All right, so I'm going to do that now. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it Windows. Already, you've done this already. All right, so now we have two files in our working directory that have not been pushed to the staging area. So you can do git add dot if you want to, or dot a, that is to add all files, dot or dot all. Currently, there are just two files, packages.config and readme.md. Like I said before, this file can be named anything. We use config-packages.config in the video. So I'm going to press enter and now I'm going to make commit. And now you can also leave it like this. Since it's a documentation, so just specify a type, docs. You can use char or docs, but I'm going to leave it as docs. Now press enter. Now git push origin -u master. So what I'm doing is I'm just upstreaming this so that next time I want to push this, I'll just do git push in the master branch. Git push origin. Make sure I spell it well. Good. So that is added. You can confirm that if you refresh the page. So currently it's just one branch. So I'm going to create another branch. So I'm going to say git branch. I'll call this setup /dev environment. Enter. Now if I do git branch, you can see, but I'm going to check out to that branch. Git check out this. Git checkout. So now I'm going to push. Good. Now I can refresh the page and this is going to be 2. Now we have 2 branches. Yeah. So you can stay in this branch and keep on making your changes. And you don't have to push after you make a commit on a file. You can push maybe after you are done with the day if you want to. All right, so this approach of making commit messages is very handy because we may set up key in our project directory, which is entirely optional. But for now, that's it.